So, hello everyone. I have the world famous Anthony Jacquin with me here today. Welcome, Ant.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat before, November.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to give much of an intro to Anthony here today, other than to say, he's our keynote. He's our keynote speaker. He's our main man at this year's UK Hypnosis Convention. I'm really proud. I'm really honored, and I think it's quite obvious when you research him and his work as to why he would be our keynote this year. And speaking of which, I know a lot of the work that you do in summer, where you're kind of prolific at festivals, where you work with performance hypnosis in pockets of people. And I know that you also did a huge stage show in India recently, where when you're on the stage, you do also share the stage with the participants of the show. So I'm interested, about the prospect of being keynote, where all the focus is upon you. Does it feel like a really different proposition for you? Or are you taking it all in your stride? How are you feeling about it?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm never entirely comfortable with all of the focus being on me, to be honest. I say that even when I'm teaching performers, it's not kind of a natural place for me to be, stepping out center stage. It's just not. It's just something I enjoy doing. I love this subject enough. That's part of the reason I started performing, was I had an interest in exploring with hypnosis, not becoming a performer. So I do it, and I enjoy the thrill of it and the bit of anxiety that comes with it and all that kind of stuff. But this is a different proposition. I haven't given a keynote before. And, to the point where I've had to think, well, what is a keynote? And that word is, which is the keynote, in a sense, should, kind of sum up the spirit of our times with regard to this topic or the event in some fashion. So certain aspects of that speak for themselves. The event does a very good job at bringing different groups of people together, different rationales for what they do, different ways of applying what they do, brings performers into the mix, which the hypnotherapists seem to enjoy as well. So, of course, I'll be encouraging that, but I want to get into the fact that right now is the best time for us to be involved in this topic. It's better than ever. It was great when I only had 2 or 3 books to draw upon and 1 or 2 odd friends to chat with now and again. Now I can fill my day speaking, as my daughter says, to your weird friends. But, there is that. There's lots of promise and lots of potential. But I'm also going to bring a bit of a sort of Elon Muskian fear vibe to the thing and say we need to watch out, because technology is on our tail and we need to embrace what's happening right now and make the most of it. We can just in the same way we're embracing a video call, a few years ago, doing therapeutic stuff over Skype, or what's now Zoom for many of us. Some people were advocating it and into it, and others were, myself included, a little bit behind the curve on it. But going further than that, there's so many opportunities now with voice, and I'm working on a few really interesting projects right now that are sort of combining information from biosensors, Apple Watches, VR, with therapeutic outcomes, clinical outcomes, and it's fantastic and it's exciting. But ultimately, the hypnotist is going to start to look like a bit of a spare part at some point. So I want to.
I find that really interesting as well, because one of the things I said at conference earlier this year, funnily enough, was that the way in which technology has grown and the way in which kind of we've made great strides in some areas, I don't think has been parallel in the way in which we've developed perhaps in the last 50 years. And perhaps that might just be me on my soapbox as always. But one of the things I wanted to say, and one of the things that I've always really admired about you and your work, every project that I've ever been involved in that you have prepared meticulously. And I've always loved that about you. And I think that makes things even more exciting for me about looking forward to your keynote in November. And of course, then your presentation. And your presentation this year is one that I'm excited about as well. You know, it's exploring a favorite topic of mine, that of self-hypnosis, but also encouraging hypnotists to progress themselves as subjects. You know, tell me why you think that's so important.
I guess because it's become important to me. You know, I've been doing this for the best part of 20 years, and I've overlooked it, but in terms of self-application, I didn't use or query or play with self-hypnosis enough for two reasons. One is that I first of all thought, I'm not a great subject, I'm not a great candidate, therefore it's only going to be have limited effect. And the second was a belief that we're fixed in that fashion as subjects. We don't really develop that much. We can try with the best of intentions, but a low is a low and a high is a high. I don't believe either of those things anymore. I appreciate some people are naturally skilled. You know, your book about self-hypnosis really was the one that brought that home to me. I know, you know, we read a lot of the generation or two before, you know, you wrote your book who are into this kind of point of view, but that bit really became clear with your book that, you know, hypnotic responding is a skill and I can get better at it and I don't need to have a special brain. So that got me back into really applying self-hypnosis. And because I'm obviously free of a state frame being a prerequisite for doing the work, I don't believe you need to necessarily do that, although I think it can be useful to, you know, become focused on what it is we're attempting to do and, you know, have some intention about what it is we want to create with our self-hypnosis. But that, in my personal experiments, led to this thing of, well, just begin wherever you're at right now.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of led me back in a bizarre way to what many people want from their application of self-hypnosis, which paradoxically is a state change. They're looking for a kind of state change. So I want to encourage people to look at it again. Something kind of sneaky I've been doing to pretty much every lecture or group I've been training in the last few years is when we get to the self-hypnosis stuff, I just say, right, in this room that's full of hypnotherapists, how many people in this room have a regular, you know, almost disciplined practice or use of self-hypnosis? How many of you use it every week?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's different if you were to ask your groups because of the emphasis that you place on it. But honestly, man, it's like crickets. It's like 5% of how,
yeah.
You know, it's not, I guess, what many people would imagine. There's a lot of people in the same stuck place doing great work, you know, clocking up miraculous anecdotes with the people they're working with, but not really applying it to themselves. So I want to encourage people, wherever you're at, to kind of see it like fitness. And if you're, you know, can't do a single push-up, or you can't run to the bus stop, or, you know, just accept that we're all a bit kind of flabby and lazy with this, but we can start, we can begin today.
I love that.
And the other bit that's kind of shaped what I've been doing, you know, I have a webinar series. It's the second one I've done, but we're about 7 months into a 12-month series, which is principally focused on, as you said, treating yourself as your own self-hypnosis laboratory. And we've been using things like, we started with taking people through the creative imagination scale of Barber, which was an interesting experiment, got into you know, all of the tips and tricks that fell out of the CSTP and Gorossini's 4-minute intervention. And what does this really mean if we're doing self-hypnosis? And then a thing that had a big impact on me, John Kilstrom. So I think you'd call him a cognitive psychologist. He's always had interest in hypnosis. I guess a bit of a kind of altered states kind of guy. But he bigs up this book called The Psychology of Consciousness by William Farthing. It's out of print, but Kilstrom made it available online as a PDF. If you search, it's, you know, the back end of some university library somewhere. it's an excellent book, although I'm sure it's, you know, it's probably 30 years old, so it's inevitably dated. Excellent book throughout, but there's one particular chapter on altered states, and he brings up the work of Charles Tart. Now, Charles Tart, again, he takes a bit of a beating from the skeptics, because he sort of, but early on, late 60s, early 70s, he wrote some excellent books about altered states, and, you know, had some credentials as a psychologist and academic, and managed to make that part of the field of study. He carried on doing all sort of weird parapsychology experiments, in my opinion, sort of held on for a bit too long to the idea that, you know, he might actually do the, you know, you're thinking of of some wavy lines and it might actually work, fudge the data a little bit. So toward the end of his career, you know, perhaps his scientific credentials, because he was pitching himself as a scientist, as a skeptic, and that took a bit of a beating. However, early on, they did this mass study where they looked at the reports of people who had experienced altered states. So they looked at meditators, they looked at drug experiences, people who had been sick, you know, people who had been caught up in some kind of moment that they would consider an altered state. They combed that through, you know, essentially for a bit like we reach for the big five to describe personality. They combed that for the words that people typically use, or the dimensions people typically use to describe state. And I found this super interesting, and it came down to like these 14 different dimensions of attention. You know, just imagine it could be inward, it could be outward, it could kind of be somewhere between the two, but we could probably play with it. The imagery you use, the inner speech you use, higher level thought processes, the meaning or significance you give an event, like, you know, I know that was meaningful, even if I don't understand it. The emotional feeling and the way you express it, levels of arousal, and one of them, of course, is a sense of self-control. And level of suggestibility. So basically this, for me, has become like, in terms of, well, I want to, you know, I'm going to do this keynote, I'm feeling a bit hot, I'm feeling a bit sweaty about this, I want to do something about it. Or what is this? I need to change my state. I find this, like, think of it like I don't even know what a 3D data set is, but imagine a three-dimensional data set with, I could pull on any of these 14 levers. I could start to become self-aware, first of all, of where my attention is and what I'm saying to myself and all that stuff. So that's kind of become my little playbook for self-hypnosis, is recognize that, you know, life is self-hypnosis, self-harm is self-hypnosis, self-healing, self-hypnosis. And we can begin right now, because this state, which is bothering you or you'd like to be free of, or this state that you'd like to turn up in, you know, both of them are fictions, and both are malleable, even if they currently seem solid and real, or they seem distant and hard to reach. We can get there. So that's what I'm going to be waffling on.
I'm so excited about this. You know, a few days ago, you and I are having an exchange about some ideas that I have, and lots of the points you were talking about there, especially, you know, elements of self-control, volition, for example, are really relevant to me at the moment. You know, I'm even in a place where I'm thinking of kind of letting go of this idea of self-hypnosis and referring to it as phenomenological control.
And thanks. I lost half a day after you uttered that to me. It was like, oh,
yeah, you know, so there's some really interesting things. So I can't wait to sit in on this presentation. You know, I'm really excited about that. And, you know, I'm hoping everybody tuning in, everybody that's watching this, gets excited about that as well. Come and join, you know, the titan of our field that is Anthony Jacquin, as well as myself and some, you know, one heck of a lot of other awesome hypnosis professionals this November. Information and details of tickets, purchases can be found at ukhypnosisconvention.co.uk. Anthony, thank you so much for coming and sharing some time today. And thank everybody for tuning in. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in November.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Adam. And I will come bearing gifts.
Yes, yeah. That's another reason to be coming, people. You'll have to wait and see what Anthony's talking about.
I come bearing gifts. All right.